Executive session, no binding actions were taken. I'm ready to move on to the next agenda item, which is adjournment of the meeting. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a
Mrs.
motion to
Campbell.
adjourn.
Second.
Everyone seconds that one. Okay. I'll take Mr. Welch. I have a motion by Ms. Hamburg, a second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. And let's take about 10 minutes before we get started. Let's say 7:30 and get started with the workshop at 7:30. Not enough places there.
No,
Downstairs.
got a sign that says order.
It's downstairs.
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be like
all
going down there.
stairs. Of course, we've got 10 minutes.
I am going to call the meeting to order. And first thing on the workshop agenda is special assessments. So, Mr. Lasher, I think you're got something to talk with us about, and maybe
Yes.
Mr. Cowan as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to do the easy portion, and then Kevin's going to do the hard portion of special assessments. So we're going to tag team this. So you're familiar. We do special assessments a lot. So the interesting thing is, because someone brought this up at one of our meetings, this is not, special assessments are not common across the U.S. In fact, not even across Kansas. You go up to Johnson County, they don't do special assessments. Really, it's South Central Kansas that does special assessments. So what typically happens everywhere else is that the builder pays to put all the infrastructure in, and they just put that, they add that to the cost of the lot. So that's why if you come to Bel Aire, you'll buy a lot for $20,000, and then you get notice that there's $30,000 of special assessments that you're going to be charged over the next 20 years, so much a month. But if you go to Olathe to buy a lot, you're going to pay $50,000 for that lot, but there's no special assessments on it. So they just build them into the cost of the lot. The good thing that why cities like this is there's no risk for the city, because the builder goes out and borrows the money from a bank to put all the infrastructure in, and then offers them for sale. And if they don't sell, then the builder goes bankrupt, and then the bank takes over the lots, and they're responsible for them. The city doesn't have to pick them up at it like we've done at a tax sale. So they're really a benefit for the city. So, we've talked about how do we get out of doing that? Well, it would take everybody in the area to do it, because if one city said no, then all the builders are going to go there, because that's less risk for them doing special assessments. So all of a sudden, if Wichita said we're not going to do it and everybody else did, then Wichita would have all the building, because the builders have a benefit in doing that. So that's what it would take for us to get out of it. But it's interesting, because especially in the commercial industrial side, when we have companies looking at Sunflower Commerce Park out of state, we say, this is the cost of the lot, and they're like, well, that's a great price. And then we say, but there's special assessments on that you have to pay. And they say, well, what are those? And they don't understand them, and they don't like them, because they see it as an extra tax. And so that's why a lot of times we offer to sell the lot and pay off the specials so that they don't have that, because that's what they know and like. Pardon? So that has happened. There's been developers that tried that. The problem is then all of a sudden Willow Bend, actually, if I remember right, whoever started Willow Bend, was it a Farha or somebody started Willow Bend and then went bankrupt because he spread the special assessments on and then was charging so much a lot. And yet you could go anywhere else outside of Willow Bend and buy a lot that same size for half the price. And so people wouldn't go buy there because they wanted to buy a cheaper lot, and they were okay paying specials because that's what we do around here. So yeah, that's happened. But typically the development doesn't go well, because people are, they say, well, why am I spending $50,000 for this lot when I go to Bel Aire, which is just right down the street, buy it for $20,000? Yep. So there's actually state statutes, KSA 12601 through 6123. So there's a lot of statutes that deal with special assessments. And again, special assessments can be on any, a lot of public infrastructure, streets and everything that we do, and other things as well. But typically what happens is, and you see it all the time because of all the buildings, is that the property owner, the developer, petitions the city to put the public infrastructure in, and that requires 51% of the benefit district. So when you have a developer that owns all the lots, he obviously has that ability to do that. The city does have the ability to install infrastructure, but there's a lot of specific requirements to do that if the city wants to do it and not petition. That's what Kevin's here. He'll answer those questions for you. So really the process is the developer hires the engineer to plat the property. Then, of course, it goes all through the process. You all end up seeing that. The engineer drafts a petition. For us, it's water, sewer, stormwater, and streets. and comes up with those engineers' estimates, and we talk about those. The developer signs the petition, submits it to the city. You all accept those petitions, and then the city hires the engineer, which again, you remember, this is all stuff that we do almost every meeting. Council accept the bids and do a temp note. Then after the project's done, that 3 years is up, we do a permanent special assessment spread. So like I said, we go through that all the time. So I wanted to switch gears because something that we have been working on is the gravel streets. That was an issue that you all kind of put together a plan to do something with that. So I actually had Garver come up with the estimates. You remember talking about that at the meeting. So they came up with the petitions. We sent those out on July 5th, and we've got, we requested August 5th to be returned. On July 29th, we sent them a follow-up letter to those that we hadn't heard from to have it back by August 12th. And then on August 15th, we sent a final letter saying we needed them back by September 1st, and they would slowly trickle in. So Arthur Heights, this is also known as Hillcrest, 47th Street, but it was platted in 53 with 36 lots. So the benefit district is 26 lots. So those are the ones that actually would benefit from the new pavement. And you can see what benefit those are. We received 17 no responses. 5 were actually returned the signed petitions. So to get 51%, you would need 12. So obviously you have more than 12 said no. And you can see the yeses and the nos, and obviously we didn't get them all back, but that's how Arthur Heights came in. So your options, you got 65% voted no, you got 20% yes. 47th Street is paved at Woodlawn, it's paved at Woodlawn, and then west of Arthur Heights. So there's just that portion of 47th that's still gravel. And then of course Hillcrest, north of 48th is paved, and then at 45th it's paved. So you just got that 2-block section there. Cozy Homes, that was platted in 65. There's 11 lots there. So we had 3 came back that said no. We had 4 that said yes. 51% requires 6 though. So you can see these are the ones that didn't return theirs. So that's there was 9 in the benefit district. So this is an interesting one because you had 45% that said yes. You had 35% no. It's a dead end, and it is paved at 37th Street. And then, of course, Aurora Park is the biggest area. That was platted in 52. There's 102 lots. The benefit district was 79 lots. So we had 35 no responses. We had 27 yes that returned their petitions. 51% requires 40. So you can kind of see there were some that didn't, even after the 3 notices or the second notice, there were some that didn't respond, but you can see kind of where they're at that were yes and no's. So you had 45% voted no, you had 35% voted yes. You've got Oliver, 37th, and Edgemore are all paved. And then Batten, Harding, and Parkwood are actually dead ends. You can see those up there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to get into the details of is there anything that you could do differently for these lots and how that would work if it's something that you're interested in. So.
Go back to the map of the yeses and Aurora Park.
So you want to come on up to here, and I'll just take care of this for you. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So this is fairly complicated, I'll warn you, particularly when you're accustomed to having special assessment projects that are generated by petition. Somebody comes to you and asks for it, and this may be different than that. There are some instances where the city can proceed on its own without the process starting by petition. There was a time when sewer system improvements and certain street improvements were the things you could just proceed, and there were limitations, but you could proceed and assess, not subject to protest. This was just important enough or made enough sense, you could just go do it. Sewer improvements are still handled that way. If somebody needed sewer system improvements, if somebody was on septic and it's a public health issue, you can connect them, make improvements, connect them to city sewer and assess the cost. It's not subject to any sort of protest. You'd have an authorizing resolution that you have all the time pursuant to petitions, except this would not start with a petition. It would be your own action to say, we need to make a sewer system improvement, and we're going to assess the cost.
Would that be true for storm sewer as well, or just sanitary sewer?
Sanitary.
Okay.
The other instance, and this has changed a little over time, but if there were certain sections of streets, and some of this would probably fall within it, if you have a street that has been improved, I was thinking Hillcrest, did you leave that up here, Todd? Is a good example or potential
We have that
example.
one section.
So let's say, for example, 47th was paved. The statutes provide that if you have a street that adjoins other parallel streets, and the parallel streets are improved, but that portion of street, in this case, it'd be Hillcrest between 48th and 47th, that you can proceed without a petition. And I'll get into the rules in a moment, but it's that sort of thing. When the parallel streets on either side of you are paved and you're not, you may be subject to special rules. The other situation is if you have, and again, this may still apply to Hillcrest, if you have a single street and it's paved, and then there's a portion that's not paved, and then there's a portion that is paved, you have the ability to go in, and as long as it doesn't exceed 2 blocks, to treat that as a project that's, again, special rules, and improve it and proceed. Interesting question, particularly when you look at it, this one works because it's nice and square, but what's a block? And I did a little research on that, and it is any area that is surrounded by streets. So, the old grid system's really easy to think about what's a block, but even some of the other areas that have cul-de-sacs, and I mean, you can still identify a block. It just may not be the perfect rectangle. And but again, some of these actually work with the old analysis. So
just a quick question. You said 2 parallel streets were paved, then you could,
or improved.
or approved, you could bring up the street that joins them to
Yes.
to approve. In that particular case, you have 48th or 49th, and I can't read the map. I'm not sure which numbers are. Okay, you have 45th, and I think it's 49th, the one at the top.
48.
48th. Okay. Those are both paved.
Right.
Does that meet that criteria or not?
No, because 47th
It's not.
is going to adjoin different portions. So if you took the section between 45th and 47th, Hillcrest adjoins 45th and 47th, and you have one, which is 47th, that's not improved. And we can jump around. I'll try to keep this as organized as possible. But for example,
It's paved
Right.
to both ends.
but Hillcrest doesn't adjoin the paved portion, which would be the key. If, for example, you decided 47th is important enough, it's a thoroughfare, we're going to go pave it. City at large, it's going to be a city improvement. Then suddenly you have Hillcrest that is adjoining on all sides, and you create an opportunity to say, well, that statute fits. So one of the things I had mentioned to Ty when we discussed this, I think you have some options. if you wanted to sort of one bite at a time, piecemeal it and work it so that in the future, some of these exceptions that I discussed will apply more readily. That's a possibility. If you wanted to treat everything that we've discussed, the three different areas, as one big project, the way the petition did, and say we still really want to proceed with that, there's a methodology, and it's not unique to trying to improve small portions of streets the way we've been talking about those exceptions. It's just another way to start a special assessment process. And that is, again, you start it of your own action. You have a resolution that gets published. You have a hearing. And so in some respects, similar to some of the things you do. After the hearing, you can adopt a resolution that creates the benefit district and says, we're going to proceed with this project. So it would look a lot like what that petition looked like. That resolution has to be published once a week for 2 consecutive weeks, and then it is subject to protest of the affected property owners. And the protest is 51% majority, but it has to be generated within 20 days of publication, which is a fairly short period of time. So again, you kind of have big picture. If you wanted to proceed with what's the normal, could apply to any street, sewer, water project where you don't have a petition. It's, again, publish notice that you're going to have a hearing. You have a hearing, adopt a resolution that creates the district, and then that resolution is subject to protest by 51% of the affected property owners. I mean, it's interesting to me here that you can look at some of these numbers and wonder, well, we know we have some people that didn't want to sign the petition, but would they generate a protest? Would they generate a protest within 20 days of publication? Would you want to proceed in that way when you've had a petition in front of people and some have said no, and then you just use a different methodology where, again, it's difficult to protest, and so you just found an alternative way to proceed? But that's a possibility. And I also mentioned to Ty that City of Rose Hill, as an example, they use that proceeding, and it's not for new streets. They have, I think, some real heavy street maintenance issues that they proceed with that methodology. We need to improve this street, heavy maintenance. We'll cover 80% of the cost at the city. We need to assess 20% of the cost. We're going to have a hearing. We're going to publish notice. Affected property owners may or may not notice the publication, and so they probably aren't going to protest, and we'll proceed with, again, mostly city at large project, but a smaller assessment. So
They don't get a direct notice? It's
No.
just to publish?
Nope. But an excellent segue. So all of those exceptions that I have mentioned, if it's the intervening portion or adjoining paved streets on either side, if you want to fit within that exception, as I mentioned earlier, you used to be able to just do that, and it wasn't subject to protest or anything. And the history of some statutory changes is that was happening a lot in South Wichita, where they had a lot of sand and gravel streets, and they just had a program where systematically we're doing a couple of blocks every year or whatever fit within those exceptions. And property owners weren't happy, and some of the state legislators weren't happy in that area. And so they changed the legislation. So now to do those street projects within the exceptions, there's just more notice. If you proceed and say, well, we're going to do these streets and we're allowed to do it in this way because it's not more than 2 blocks, or we're connecting to the paved streets, however we factually get there, you have to mail notice to every affected property owner in advance of the hearing. So you still have a hearing, but you mail notice to everybody. After the hearing, still authorizing resolution has to be published twice, but the protest period is 30 days instead of 20, which, again, it seems like it's making it easier for property owners, better notice, and it is, but the threshold to protest is 75%. So it's sort of legislature gives and takes away. One way, it's easier to meet the 51% theoretically, but a shorter period of time to do it. The other way is property owners get abundant notice and have a longer period of time to generate a protest, but they have to get to 75%. So that is the general improvement and assessment law, which is the modern assessment law that we use. There's one other possibility. Ty actually referenced 12601, which is kind of the beginning of the assessment statutes. It's very old. It's for street improvements, and those same exceptions that I mentioned, 2 blocks, intervening portion, or connected other paved streets, still can be handled differently, where you adopt a resolution of intent, you publish notice, do all those things, and where I described earlier, that would be subject to protest under the more antiquated statute. If you're fitting within those exceptions, the intervening portions, not subject to protest. So it's more like what the statute was before some of the Wichita legislators had it changed. So, and I mentioned it's an antiquated statute because it really is. If you used it and said, that's how we're going to go, it's not subject to protest. Before you impose the assessments, you have to appoint 3 disinterested property owners in the city. They have to make determinations about what is the appropriate amount of assessment on those lots, and it's just a completely different process. So I mentioned that as a possibility in that it would not be subject to protest, but the rest of the process would be difficult and odd. And where I've seen that used in the past, it's the 3 disinterested property owners that are appraisers aren't ignored, but they're certainly nudged in the direction of, go do this, but here's how you should determine that the assessment should be done.
Here's the results we want.
Right. So again, that is rarely used. And again, no opportunity for any more input from property owners. And not all of those projects would fit right now. Ty and I were talking, Cozy Drive wouldn't. It dead ends. It doesn't have any adjoining streets that are improved. It doesn't have any other sections that are improved, and that section is not improved. So that's one portion that some of these exceptions for street improvements just wouldn't apply. That might be the standard. Okay, we're going to proceed by giving notice. It's interesting that other than, I think, 3 company-owned properties, that had a majority of property owners that were in favor of it. And so it would seem unlikely that one, if you said that's a project by itself, we're going to give notice, we'll have the hearing, there's 20-day period to protest with 51% of the owners. Maybe it's unlikely that doesn't happen, particularly when the only notice is published notice and not mailed notice. But
Let me ask you a quick question while we got Cozy up there. Number 1 approved it, but we didn't hear anything from the rest of, I can't remember the name of the company, Treetop, isn't it?
Treetop.
But doesn't Treetop own number 1? So did they think maybe that they approved it for all their lots? Do we need the clarification from them?
well, do they own 1, 9, and 8 there? Or do they also own one across the street?
One because it's a parking lot for their employees.
Yeah, so 9 and 8 didn't respond on the south side. Okay.
They're all owned by Treetop.
Well, Treetop owns those houses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is there two number 1s on the map?
I wonder if it's like a block B or something. Oh, yeah.
that's where Treetop Nursery actually sits, right?
Yes.
And then 9 and 8 are actual homes.
Right, but they're the people that own treetops, so.
They own Treetop?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying, I think maybe they might have meant all of their lots, yes, since they didn't respond. In which case,
So you're
we didn't have to
thinking-
worry about cozy, we just go do it because we have a majority there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can look at it.
But I do agree that one is sort of a different animal. However you get there, maybe it is they would sign a majority petition, or if you treated it separately, it seems like maybe there is a majority that's in favor of it. So even if you subjected it to the protest period, that they may not get to the 51%.
So,
I'd rather we just try it and say yes, but.
That's
I'm
the
not
easier
against the
thing.
protest.
That's the easy one.
If you can't get them to respond any other way.
so Ty, not having been to the open house back in July or for this process, I know a lot of people passionately feel about the dust and doing it, but the people that said no, have you gotten the impression that it was the money or they really do like the rural feel?
Yeah, so what was interesting is when you look at, especially in Aurora Park, because those are all the bigger lots.
Flip it back.
Um,
Please. Yeah, thank you.
So what I found was there's several people that own 2 lots. And so, for example, they may own, well, like here, there's a couple lots here, and I don't know why it's platted, but there's a couple lots here. And then there were some that owned, side by side lots. But it was the people that owned 2 lots voted no because their special assessments would be double. But they owned 2 lots, so they got 2 votes. So that was very interesting, is you had some people that voted no twice because they own 2 lots. So, yeah.
Well, that raised an interesting question. If they go with a protest petition, do those people that own 2 lots get 2 votes on a protest petition? And maybe that's splitting a hair that you don't know.
They don't. So protest petition and even the petition to start the process, it's based on resident owners of record, resident owners of record of area. So the first one was just how many, if we made a list of all those lots, how many resident owners are there? Husband and wife count as 2. That's the numerator denominator calculation we're going to make. Then there's the area. So obviously, if you're looking at an area test, it would count double, so to speak. And then the third test is number of owners, resident or not. So corporate owners could count in that regard. So, I mean, there's a way you could approach it. One of the things I was just thinking, when a neighborhood, a development subdivision is that old, it seems less likely the 2 lots would turn into 2 homes versus if it's brand new, you want to make sure each lot is maybe treated equally because you don't know how property owners will develop. It may turn into 2 lots. Even if an owner owns 2 of them and promises you, we're never going to build another home on that lot. Well, they still could. And so maybe if there was some appetite for that approach to say, well, we're not going to do it equally per lot. Maybe it's equally per residential unit or something. So the 1 home on 2 lots doesn't pay 2 assessments because it's unlikely that's ever going to turn into another home that's benefiting from the street. But
So for Aurora Park, it doesn't meet any of their special criteria. We would have to put out one of these petition choices, right?
I think
What would
it
we-
could
if we
meet.
decided we wanted to
Turn
pave
your
it,
mic on. Turn your mic on.
I
if we
think it-
decided we wanted to pave it, what would be the right course of action?
Well, I think it could meet the criteria. This one's really interesting. It just would take some time. You couldn't do it all at once. You'd have to piecemeal it so that maybe certainly and what's the street on the right, Ty, the vertical north-south
We
one?
got enough yes votes there, we could do that.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so if you said that northern portion, and maybe you draft a petition and say, what's north of, was it 40th? 40th is everything it's above the cross street, and say, well, that's going to be a project by itself. And we're going to do it next year. Then you have a portion of that street that has been paved, and depending upon some other things and how they come about down south, you may be able to back into, and probably would be able to back in to some way that you start creating sections that do meet one of those exceptions, whether it's they've got a paved portion on either side of it, or we have a portion that's and maybe that's not a great example. You could pave that northern portion, and then you got a bunch of no's, but then you have some yeses down south. So maybe you pave some of that, and then you would create this intervening portion that's not paved.
It looks
That
to
in the
me,
future you could say, well, we're going to meet one of those exceptions.
it looks to me if we wanted to be hard nosed about it, we could do that whole 2-block section because there's actually more yeses than nos.
I would generally agree. We'd have to dig into the details, but I think that's a true statement. If you wanted to be hard-nosed about it and patient and take it a piece at a time with a plan for in the future, this piece is going to meet one of those exceptions, even if we have to use the antiquated statute that's not subject to protest, that you can probably find a way over time.
Okay, well, part of what's driving this is it looks like the people at the North Block really want it. And so if we give it to them, then would we make it 2 blocks long just to get a big chunk done at once?
Yeah, well, I look at that and I think too, and I don't know what the traffic patterns are, but you could say, well, it looks like that area is maybe served probably, I think that's 40th, by 40th, and then the portion going north. So that L, even though there's some no's on 40th, down below, if you said that portion of 40th and then that part going north, that's a benefit district. We're going to do that. And maybe even we accept a petition to do it. So it's not just us doing it. The majority of the property owners said, let's do it. So then you create maybe a situation where in the future you have an intervening portion of the north-south road that's not paved, or it at some point has a parallel street that's paved that adjoins it on the north, and maybe that southern cross street is at 38 or 39.
Did we get a yes on that one lot north of, that's on Edgemore, just west of Edgemore on the north side of that street, whatever that is?
No vote.
There's a no on the south, but what about the lot on the north, or is it not part of it? Up and right. Edgemore's not coming down the right side. I don't know who's got the point of that lot. Yeah, is that part? There's a red no, but is that a yes above it, or is that not part of the district?
Well, it wasn't part of it. It wasn't originally, but it needed to be, so they have it.
Yeah.
So that's a yes. It is in the district.
So we might have, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if we really have enough clout to go do that side street.
Mr. Mayor.
So let me finish. If we did that north section, we would have to completely finish it before we could apply any other rule to the next section. So this would be like with all those pieces, it'd be a 10-year project or something.
Several year, certainly.
Yeah, okay.
Well, they may be so elated that two blocks got done. Everybody else says, we want it done.
Yeah, they might like it so well, they say, why did we vote no?
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
just a question. Part of the genesis for this project was the drainage improvements. Is it even feasible to split the drainage improvements up into multiple projects and still have that be an effective project?
Yeah, that's a good question, because you're right. If we did this section, improved all the drainage, and didn't do any drainage improvements here, all of a sudden we probably have a big lake there.
Yeah, you will.
And when you say drainage, is that, curbing, guttering, city storm sewer as opposed to ditches, or is it
No,
more?
it's open ditches.
Ditches, but we know that the ditches all need work.
Significantly improved, a different style of ditch, if I remember right.
Right, and the streets, we're not gonna have curbs anyway.
Yeah.
We're still gonna have ditches.
Oh, okay. So that really would have to be separate from I mean, sometimes you can say, well, the street and the curb and the gutter, that's all one project. But if it's really just paving, then I think you'd have to consider that separately, which means none of those street paving exceptions apply, and you're probably back to, you just give notice and.
Well, and the original intent was, basically the city was going to pay for drainage improvements, significant drainage improvements, and bear that burden if we knew that it was going to be a permanent solution because the paving had taken place. That's the problem with making a lot of investment in drainage improvements with not paved roads, is it's a really short-term temporary solution. You're just throwing money away.
And piecemealing it doesn't work that well.
Right.
We wouldn't even begin to know how to allocate the money the city was gonna put towards the project if we start piecemealing it. That's,
It's gets to be complicated.
I tend to agree. I think that you would ideally want to master drainage plan the whole thing, and then you would want to pave it.
Well, we don't have a majority vote either way on this area. So we certainly have the right to, I think, to move forward and say, we're going to do something here. I mean, in spite of because petitions don't have a majority. There isn't one.
right.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, I think in terms of these property owners have seen what's proposed, and some of them have explicitly expressed no. That again, it hard nosed about it, political will, whatever you want to call it. I think that's part of the consideration as well. Just do you proceed in a way that maybe they're not as informed as they would have been, and it happens, and just dealing with some of those consequences.
Well, clearly the people on Hillcrest don't want to do it, so I guess I'd leave them alone, even though I'd like to see it paved. And I think if we talk to the people at Treetop, we might find out that we could do Cozy based on their answers. And that would take care of those two pieces. And as many times as I've heard complaints from Aurora, I would have the will to go ahead and start the process.
It's pretty close to 50-50 based on that. And so if that was sort of combined street and drainage, and we followed the 51% protest process, the sort of typical applies to any project, not special rules for streets, then it may not be all that likely that 51% or more protest is generated in 20 days.
So Ty, am I seeing it right? Based on 79 lots, there's actually technically 17 that didn't vote. You need 13 to get to the 40 required.
Yeah, and then you saw that, we sent out the
Right.
petitions and
And
two
they
other.
just never responded.
Yeah.
So technically, you could potentially get the other 17 to vote and see what that is, but you can't force them to.
I think we prodded them enough. I think I don't think there's any more prodding is prudent for us.
Well, my question would be, have we ever went through this? Is this the first time we've went through this process as a city, or have we went through this same process multiple times?
I
That's the
don't ever
first.
recall. I mean, it's always been a possibility, but I don't think it's ever been used.
I think these are the only areas that didn't have paved roads to begin with.
Right.
So I guess the question for you is, would you like Kevin and I to start working on, putting a proposal together for you to consider, or are you comfortable with the numbers and just, some
To be
direction?
crystal clear for myself and at home, this would be us funding it. We would not be asking homeowners to pay anything if we move forward. The city would cover.
No, if we were to do the special assessment process, we would, I would assume we would do what was in the petitions, where the city would pay for the drainage piece of it, and
Okay.
they would pay for the
Okay.
pavement. And as Kevin said, there is a protest period. So we would send it out and say, we're going to do this. And unless we get 51% protesting, we move forward.
I could see it in Cozy Lane, but that's the only one I see that where it's clearly wanted, or it's not clear that they didn't want it.
Yeah, this isn't clear either. I mean, that's the problem. This Cozy and Aurora Park, neither one are clear on that. They neither one of them came back with enough votes to say we want it this way or that way. So that's the issue.
There's a lot of red dots.
Right.
I do think the observation is really interesting on the double lots. And I really wonder if that were treated differently, it would be 50-50 split potentially on the numbers here.
Probably because you got
There's a
I
lot of
see
double
at least
lots.
5 double lots, and there's probably more in there that I can't see from the map. That's
But
5
are the
votes.
double lots no's or yeses?
They're no.
They're all no's.
So if they were split in half, then there wouldn't be nearly as many no's.
And the
Right. That's the point.
Well, I thought I heard the
There's 5 no's.
other statement coming from over here that it would make it more people against than,
No, that wasn't what I intended to imply.
okay, I misunderstood you then.
Yeah, because you would be taking off, 10, up to 10 no's for 5 lots.
And the protest, I've just generally referenced it as 51%, but it's 51% or more of the resident owners of record of property. So that was kind of when we were talking about numerator, denominator. And
If there's any commercial owners, they don't get to vote.
correct,
So that would sew up Cozy then.
probably. And so it's an and, it's not an or. And the owners of record of more than half. So you're probably right.
Okay.
Corporate might own a large area of the Cozy district, but that's only one prong of the test that I just described. So maybe they would meet it on that, but maybe not the 51% of resident owners of record.
So we have the one lot here, just to clarify that, the one lot there at 37th and Harding on the northwest corner. That is owned by a developer, and he's not done anything with it. He tried to a couple years ago, and it wasn't very pretty. So it was never approved. But he still owns it, I think. I don't think he sold it. Does he get a vote on this or on this protest petition thing here?
I mean, if it's, ABC Development LLC,
Yeah.
then that's not a resident owner of record. I guess even if it's Bob
It's a vacant
Smith,
lot.
if they're not a resident,
Right.
they're clearly a resident elsewhere, then that's correct.
So would okay, so that's a good, because I did see there was a couple votes that were no, that they lived at a retirement community, but they still owned it. So that if they didn't actually live, they weren't a resident there, then those would not count. What about trusts?
Trusts, I had to do this research a long time ago. I think
There's
trusts
some of those.
are treated the same as corporate entities. And so
Really?
they aren't residents. But I think
I think
it's
it's
like
still
28 years old. I can dust off that memo because it's
I would like to ask you to look into that because I know a lot of times trusts or
right.
people in their estate planning have created trust that own their property and they're living there. So
I mean, the thing of it is, if they're not a resident, it reduces both the numerator they're trying to get to and the denominator. So
Yeah.
it's not completely dispositive. It's just sort of you're not part of this test at all. You can be part of the area test, but
So just a quick clarification. So if we were to eliminate, however we can do that, the ability for two lots to have two votes is what I was kind of hearing. Do we think essentially the way the assessment would work, would it be twice assessed to those lots in that situation or one time assessed? So basically making it equal parts.
I think that's something we'd have to work through. As I mentioned, if it was a brand new development, then two lots, I think, get equal benefit. They have the same opportunity
If
to
it could be
develop and
developed.
take advantage of
Right.
the improvements. If it's one home that's spread across both lots, or maybe there's a garage and that
Right.
it's clear it's not going to develop into any other uses, then you might be able to treat that as a sort of residential assessment unit instead of doing it equally per lot.
Because I wonder if we re-evaluated that, repetitioned, and made sure the double lot owners knew that they're not going to pay twice as much taxes, that would make a difference.
I don't
But
think,
we're
I
still
think
not
they're
gonna
still
get to
gonna pay
40.
twice the
Right.
taxes. They're gonna pay taxes on both lots. They just may
Just
only
in
get
a-
one
not an
vote instead of
improvement.
two.
Right.
And regardless, if we get the same number of responses, we're still not going to hit the 51% in either direction. And so I was mentioning that because I think it's an interesting indicator of the sample of data that we have and what we might see in that situation, and something I'm thinking about in terms of would I be willing to move forward with going through the process of saying, hey, we think that more people actually want this than not, but we didn't get all the responses that we needed. So we're actually going to shift the burden from us collecting the responses to you collecting the responses to say that you don't want this.
So
Seems logical.
my perspective on this is the ones that did not vote, either way, don't care. They've taken out a position, you can do it if you want, or you don't have to do it. Because they had the opportunity. We gave them 3 opportunities to respond, and they didn't do it. So I think that's a vote, I don't care, whatever you want to do.
One thing I just want to mention that somebody in Aurora Park mentioned and asked about was the certified letter issue. Now, I can't imagine somebody that lets 3 letters stack up over a few months,
Right.
but is that an option to, short of banging on their door, to try to one more time get an answer? I don't know.
Did we send them certified letters or not?
No.
But they were letters.
Yes, and three different times.
Okay.
Clearly marked as a city letter. Like it was obvious that it came from the city of Bel Air.
Yes, and then the first letter actually had self-addressed stamp envelopes in them, so it didn't even cost to return either the no vote, which there was a card that was included to simply vote no, I do not wish to proceed, send it back, or they can sign the petition, which was included, send it back. So there was return envelopes in the first one, so there was no charge to send it back.
And nobody sent both back.
Take this stuff away.
I'm going to add a wrinkle as I was rereading one of the statutes, and I gave an incorrect answer earlier on the stormwater sewer. Sanitary and stormwater are treated the same.
They are.
So no protest to those sorts of projects. And again, depending on how hard-nosed you wanted to be, you could shift some of those projects to assessments and streets to city at large. And
So we could
See if that
assess the
mix
whole
changed
stormwater project?
without protest, yes.
Well, we weren't even planning on assessing it to begin with. That's why I'm asking. Because we could, like you said, we could shift all the costs of the stormwater and then pay for part of the street.
Yeah, so the
It
bottom
still
line,
works out the homeowner's still paying a bunch of
Right.
taxes.
it just may change the process a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to go down
That
that
sounds
road.
too complicated,
It
yeah.
does sound complicated.
Moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket.
Yeah, but now I lean the
Still the
other
same
way.
amount of money. So, well, I feel like, and you tell me if I have the wrong impression, that we'd like to probably pursue that with Aurora Park and see if that goes. And I think that between Ty and I, we need to go make a visit with the owners of Treetop and see what they really intend on their vote, because I think there definitely looks like there's confusion there. We need to understand that. Okay.
Well, and I guess we should pursue it on Cozy too, but not quite as quickly. if you can get an answer from Treetop.
Yeah.
If you can't get an answer, then start the process is what I'm.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Is that agreeable? I mean, it's not a vote. We're just looking for consensus here.
We're just saying
We'll
prepare
be
the
voting on it
paperwork.
later if we decide to pursue it. It's,
Right.
Please clarify when you say pursue that. I saw
Okay,
several
yeah, yeah.
different
All
routes,
right.
and I'm not sure there's consensus
So,
on what that
and
is.
I understand. Yeah, I did not clarify. I wasn't very clear about that. So please pursue the option where we put out the notice, the twice notice that's subject to a protest petition. Is that clear?
And not with the special street provisions, just the typical special assessment for any type of.
Right. Yes, please.
The big project version.
But we just published the notice publicly twice. And then
20 days.
they have time to protest it. And if they don't get 50% in that time, then it becomes the rule.
Right.
Okay.
And I
Not the
assume,
third choice, which
I
was.
assume you'll have to create some documents and that'll have to come before council for a vote,
Correct.
right? Before any of that can happen.
Yeah, and again, it's sort of two-step where resolution to say we're considering this, have a hearing, then a resolution, and that second resolution is what gets published twice and subject to protest.
I'm just thinking out loud since it's a workshop.
Yes.
Is it, I know we have a lot of passionate people about dust and I get that. I get that. But I know that, and this does come down to optics of, if I was like a no voter and I don't ever look at the breeze or anything, I'd say, well, I put my vote in, and I'm not going to pay attention. And then I turn around and get hit with assessment. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right?
Well, yeah, it is, but yeah,
But the majority's not clear. I get, yeah.
Yeah, the majority isn't clear. And the other part of that is that I would be extremely surprised that if somebody voted no and just dropped the issue from there on to say, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to what city does on this because they don't know what the rest of the votes are. They don't have that. I would just say, wow, you didn't follow it through. I just don't understand not following through on that.
And then they'll have another checkpoint with the protest. Okay.
If you're that interested, you definitely need to follow through. Yeah.
Quick question, Mayor. Maybe for Ty. Were these results shared with everybody that voted?
No.
So this is the only time that they would have had the chance to see the votes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted you to see them before I shared them with anybody else.
Gotcha. I just wasn't sure if there was any sort of official notice that we have to return to them of the result.
Okay. I guess not. I mean, I don't know.
I did have people would call and, in your weekly emails, I'd kind of keep track for you. And if someone called and asked, I would share it with them. I'd tell them what it was. But yeah, we didn't put out a letter or anything like that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just feel like I can see that we didn't get a clear answer. So that's a concern. It'd be nice to go knock on their door or, like you're proposing with Treetop or somehow get the 17 to really vote. But I don't like the idea that it looks like we're saying we didn't like the answer, so we're going to try another way that maybe is less stringent on the yes requirements. But you're still going to have to pay.
I guess I take a different approach towards that. It's not that I don't like the answer, it's that the answer is inconclusive. I can't make a decision based upon that answer. That answer tells me that, yeah, a lot of people want this done. And yeah, a lot of people don't want this done. It's inconclusive. I'm just as inconclusive now as I was before we started that petition. I was hoping the petition would clarify, but it didn't, So that's the problem I have.
Yeah, that part's great to try to get a clear answer. But we're also trying to change the rules. We've talked about letting multiple lot owners only have one vote, things like that.
I'm not suggesting we change any rules. I think we need to go with whatever the statute says you do, you do. He laid out 3 or 4 options, and I'm just saying, let's use that one option. But we'll do what those statutes say. We're not going to make a different rule. And I don't know that the statutes give us options on those rules, do they? They really say, if you follow this route, this is what you got to do. Is that
Right.
true?
And yes, and I'll circulate a memo. It's old, but where we researched this, and it was in connection with a protest petition, but the same considerations apply even to signing a petition. And the point was made earlier, there may be 5 lots in there that got counted as no's that maybe can't be counted as no's because they're not resident owners, or they're multiple owners or single owners of multiple lots. And so we'll have to apply, I think, some of those considerations, and that may inform even some of these results a little more if that was useful to the council.
I guess I'm struggling with this because we took a vote. We asked for their opinion. I would really like to share this information more widely, and I would like to encourage the folks that did vote yes to help them get the rest that haven't voted to vote. That's my opinion on the matter. I don't know that we've tried hard enough. If this is the first time we've taken a petition on this, and this is the first time that we've not gathered this data completely, I think it's worth another try.
So how many letters do you send out to each of the people that have not responded, Ty?
We sent 3 to the people that have not responded, 3.
Okay. So that's, personally, I think we went over and above, but
Well,
I
I'm
don't know.
suggesting that the information, the results of this survey be given to the people that voted to then help and aid them in lobbying for their own neighborhood to make that decision for their neighborhood. That's kind of what I'm suggesting. Only my opinion, just wanted you to know.
Well, I think the important part of it, that would be one piece, getting the information out. The other piece is what's going to happen, because that's what I continue to get. They'll call or they'll email and say, hey, what's the numbers? And I'll tell them. And so in this example, there's more no's than yeses. Then the next question is, so what's the city going to do? And so we could share this information, but I think it would be, if you're thinking that, this would be the option, then we could certainly say, this is what the numbers are. And the city is going to move forward with this action if we don't hear from 75% of the homeowners or 100%, whatever you want to say, so that way they know that, okay, if I don't vote or whatever happens, then the city's going to move forward. And again, moving forward means that sending out the petition, and if there's moving forward, and if there's not enough protests, then it'll get paved.
Well, I think we have now made all this information public, so anybody could react at this point before we do anything else. And then we'll have to have all the paperwork, and we'll have to vote on it. So they'll have an opportunity to come and complain and have their voice heard again then. And then after that, they have the right to file a petition if they don't like the way we voted. So that's 3 more opportunities to do something. And they've already had 3. I think they've got plenty of opportunity here.
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're wanting to do, but just a couple options that maybe will address that. And I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. Okay. Send this information in the map form like it is to the people who didn't respond, and say, hey, this is what it is. City's thinking of moving forward. Are you going to vote? Okay. One, just I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but just sure. It's public record.
It's public now.
It's all public.
Been videoed and out there, so anybody that cares can see it.
Yeah. If you look at it right now.
Right.
Yeah. So, or send it to all the property owners and say, the city's going to move forward with the process. Or
It bothers me that we would send it just to the few that didn't vote. We could,
like I said, I was
I'd
just thinking
almost
out
be
loud.
at the point, if we're going to do that, we ought to give it to everybody and have them have a chance to change their vote. I don't-
Well, let's do that. Let's
I
do
think-
that. Let's put a letter together to the citizens, to all those property owners, and show them this map and say, if you want to change your vote, it's an opportunity to change your vote. Not knowing any difference by, the end of September, city will probably start moving forward with development of the pavement part. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, trying to see what
And
we
so
do.
what is the purpose of that communication? Like, what are you thinking that might accomplish?
Okay, so some citizens don't know the results of this, and some do because some are watching this, okay? And it would give everybody the results. Now we got it, okay? And because the results are inconclusive, we're going to move forward with some action unless we get back changes in votes or additional votes that are legitimate.
I like half of Tyler's idea and half of Mayor's idea because
Okay.
because I wouldn't say change the vote, but I would let them see this map and then let them know about the petition process. Because I don't want to have Ty have a headache of being like, oh, they're changing their votes now after 2.5 months.
Yeah.
But it would tell them, here's where we stand now. Here's why we're doing this process. And if you are a hard no, here is what we're headed, and you're going to have to come protest this.
Yes. You come let your voice be heard as well, because if you get a room crowd, if you get a bunch of people up here that's just all are saying no and nobody's saying yes, that kind of changes the way we feel.
But
about it.
Yeah,
but
if
the
we
protest process is clear with
Right.
a majority of no's.
And
I-
if
I
we
feel-
publish
feel-
this, it lets some of the yeses maybe try to influence their own neighbors is what
Well,
I'm.
that could be. Yeah. Okay.
I feel most comfortable with us sending notices of that map to everyone that voted.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay.
The ones that didn't.
And I love the idea of using it as a way to inform them of the process that we're about to start.
Yeah,
I love
I'm
both
good with
those.
all that. But I think we should have everything prepared to do whatever we're going to do at the first meeting next month.
The other thing that
First, I think.
I don't, this has just been dragging and dragging.
I
didn't
know,
we
I
were going
know.
to send out 2 more reminder letters. I thought we were going to ask everybody and they'd, so
Let's October.
I don't know
Fourth.
why we had to baby them through 2 more rounds and now we're going for a 4th round. So
Well, yeah, I don't think we're doing a 4th round. I think we're advising now.
that's basically what this is a 4th round, because anybody that
All right.
hasn't voted can still send in their votes. What's going to happen? And
is that actually true, or has the deadline passed?
well, we already let the first deadline slip.
I would suggest not taking any more votes from this thing because we have babied them. I'd say, hey, we're moving forward with this petition process and you can come complain there.
And what's nice about that notice is it does go above and beyond what the statutory requirements are of just putting it in the breeze, which means if there really are 51% of people that don't want this, they will have an abundant amount of time to initiate that protest petition because they could start it before it's even real.
Yeah, they could show up with a petition at the first meeting when we said we were going to do something about this.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I'll bet you there'll be 6 or 7 here anyway, no matter what we do.
Definitely. I don't doubt that one
Because
bit.
that is the
At
thing. These
least.
results are inconclusive, and if we could get a conclusive result, either in favor or against it, that helps a lot.
Right?
So just one more clarification, Mr. Cowan, the petition changed the rules that now it's residents that only vote and not property owners.
It
No, it's
doesn't.
residents that are property
Mr.
owners.
Cowan, answer the question, please.
It's the property owners always have an opportunity. It's just a question of, are you a resident owner and do you count in one calculation, or are you not a resident owner? Then you might count in another calculation. So it may may impact the way I would look at that if I work through to see if a trust owned it. What I'm hearing at this point, we probably don't need to worry about that level of detail unless it's in the protest petition. And then if you are a resident owner, husband and wife, as I said, count as two. You're going to be part of that calculation. And if you're not a resident owner, you're also part of the calculation, but it's the area component. You have to get to a majority of the area.
And are you saying that if we had moved forward under this process, that you would have applied those same tests when you actually got into the details of these
If,
petitions?
for example, this was 50-50 and we're trying to decide what do we have here, maybe, then yes, we would work through it that way. That doesn't mean, I mean, you all would be informed of that process. And I might say, well, look, once I applied all the statutory rules, who's a resident, who's not a resident, we got to 52-48 yes versus no. You might still say, well, I don't know, that seems too close. Or, a trust owned, the Bob Smith Trust owned that lot, but Bob Smith lives there and we didn't count him as a resident. I mean, we probably would have gone through that sort of process. I hope there's not a Bob Smith.
So to be clear, we wouldn't be changing the rules then if we went, okay.
No, maybe I didn't understand. I think this was just majority of owners, right? Kind of the simple numerator, denominator.
Didn't get down to the rules, but this would all be-
The more detailed rules of, well, you don't count as two or you don't count at all because you're an LLC sort of thing.
There was some intentionality in choosing the lot split, like, making sure that, I think at the point, at the time, Garber was thinking about the importance of access and usage of the road, so they wanted to get, give twice as much access to the road, then it's fair to argue that you should pay twice as much. So there was intentionality in lot split, like as you're saying, that doesn't quite answer the more detailed points of program.
Right.
Okay, sounds like we have completed this topic, so thank you for the information, and
You're welcome.
now we got some homework to go do, and I think it's time to move on to the next
Okay,
topic. If we're
thank you.
ready. Okay. All right. So the next one is finances, and we have a proposed fee schedule with revisions. Looks like they made a lot of revisions. Somebody's been busy.
Yeah, we're glad we're not on budget anymore, but here's another component. We made some changes to the fee schedule, wanted to discuss them. A lot of them are recommendations or discussion topics. The print off I had, it starts on page 3 of the packet. I want to make sure numbers are lined up if we just want to get right into it.
Well, that is a fee. It starts with an
Section
alcohol, liquor.
1.
Section 1 is alcohol and liquor.
Section 1 is alcohol. Yep. I'll try to work by sections. A lot of them are pretty non-confrontational in that we would need to match what the state says. So that's what Section 1 is. I would strongly suggest accepting our proposed changes for all the general retailer of malt beverages, and because all these are aligns with state and city terminology.
What does it mean to match what state says? Does that mean there's a statutory requirement that we charge a specific fee or fine, or is it a suggestion?
The way Melissa, our city clerk, so the state will get there and change statutory requirements, and this is making sure we're in line with those. So what she wrote is state limits licensing fees, align state and city terminology. So that's the way I take it, is the state changed, so we need to change as well.
So where it says general retailer, $300 per year, current proposed change to $225 per year, you're saying the state is saying you can only charge $225 per year for that.
That is my my understanding of it.
Yeah, sometimes it's a not to exceed costs, because sometimes the state does let you negotiate fees, but you can't exceed a certain threshold. But in these cases,
I'm assuming without having looked at what Melissa found, it's the state's required fee. So it's like in court cases, sometimes it's a suggestion, but in most of these fees, it's determined by statute, and we can't opt out of it. It's uniform to the state.
Okay.
Well, let me ask about 1.1.2 then, because it looks like we're just forwarding all the money to the state. We don't get anything out of this? Because it says $25 state stamp fee and a $50 non-refundable fee. And we're only able to charge $75?
Yeah, a lot of the fees that we impose, is fines and stuff from police department, they go to the state.
They just go straight through.
So-
We just get to handle the money for them. Okay.
I think we only have one establishment, so I mean, we're not talking large
Retailer?
retailer. Yeah,
This is off-premise consumption, so I assume that's still liquor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I wouldn't get too much in the weeds because we got the one.
there we go.
one seller of
Section 2, this we did a lot of work in this in 2019. The big updates we have is a solicitor, peddler, and a transient merchant. We tried to explain a little bit the differences, but this clarifies and aligns with city code. Pretty much a solicitor comes and wants a 30-day pass to go knock on doors. He comes to City Hall, gets a permit. I run a basic background check on him or her. That costs the city $10. So we figured with my time, $15 extra for the background check and then $30 for 30 days.
was that then $45?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So clarify for us, please, or listening public, these licenses, those persons who go door to door must have these on their person when they go door to door?
They do.
Thank you.
And the solicitor, peddler, transient merchant, they all kind of sound and seem the same to me. Do we actually need to make a distinction with 3 different fee schedules there?
So based on our code, we do. Peddler has the product with them. A solicitor offers a product and brings it back. So like solar
So we could
panels.
simplify our code.
And then, I would say let the code lead and then the fee schedule follow. Got it.
So one other clarification, what about nonprofits like the Girl Scouts selling their cookies? I mean, they could be a solicitor or a peddler, but do they need to get these fees to get these licenses?
This came up a few years ago.
No, they don't get a fee, but they do need to come report to the city.
They do?
Yes.
Okay, so those organizations, the way they typically work, they'll have a pack of a troop or whatever they call them, and they'll have 10 girls and they'll go out and canvass the city. Each girl needs to go get a license?
No, like whoever's in charge of that group would have to come in and not get a license. Again, there's no fee, but inform the city. Our code discusses the process for that. I can look it up and go into more detail with you.
Okay, if you would, I'd appreciate understanding that a little better, because that sounds surprising to me, but okay. I'm not going to argue with whatever it is. Thank you.
And from experience, you either have salesmen that know the drill. They go to a lot of cities and they come straight to City Hall, get their permit and go. And a lot of the ones that maybe we come in after the fact, get reported, police officer, somebody, code enforcement officer go out, tell them you need to get permitted. They come and get permitted. Not a lot of Girl Scout troops get called upon to go issue. So,
I'm not gonna
so
call
that's
on
kind
them.
of, we don't deal with it too often, the nonprofit sector, but it is important. And Jackie could probably explain the differences, but that's where we're at.
And also that only applies if you're selling things, if you're going around for religious or political or other purposes that are not in selling, you don't need any of that, right?
Correct.
Yeah, correct. Page 4.
Could we go back to
Sure.
1.2? Sorry. We kind of skipped over the alcohol where we increased the fees. The city temporary permit for selling or serving,
Oh,
that applies to like someone having a wedding at a venue in town.
But this applies that they're selling. Is that true?
It says selling or serving.
Oh, it does say selling or serving. Okay. Caters.
And then the caterers is 1.2.2, where we doubled.
They will say it.
Again, I can clarify with our city, our city clerk kind of submits these and says they're in line with state. This one doesn't say the state, so I'll clarify with you and send.
But
send
again,
out.
we said state probably has a not to exceed. Doesn't mean that you have to raise it to that. Unless it's all a pass through.
Yeah, and we're pretty diligent, or city clerk's pretty diligent, so there's probably somewhere in the code, I imagine, that has $100, and our fee schedule has 50. So again, we let the city code lead, and this is more of a cleanup bill that says, hey, code says 100, we need to say 100 in our fee schedule, so there's no conflict. But that's me guessing.
Clarify that selling or serving.
I'll clarify as well.
So, Mr. Mayor, I do have the section for charitable organizations. For persons soliciting for a charitable contribution, as long as the person is soliciting charitable funds, submits a letter to the city clerk identifying the recipient of the funds, fundraising methods, and the dates which the funds will be collected. That's what we ask for our nonprofit organizations. So I know we've allowed people to come in and discuss that in person, and we let PD know as well, but code requires that it be in writing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. David, did you get your question answered?
Well, it's going to be answered.
It'll be
Still
answered.
in action. Thank you.
I don't want to guess.
Yes, you can skip on it.
That's why we have workshops right here. Page 2, I think we, I guess to round out, no other changes in page 1 or page 3. Page 4, there's actually a fee on the books that says $50 per vehicle for solid waste garbage trucks. I've never collected one. Like I don't. It goes to the fact, why do we have a fee if we don't collect it? We do have a contract for all solid waste, and I think we can address that in the contract. Or, as you know, we transfer $100,000 to our street funds out of those types of funds. So I figured we'd remove this fee unless you want me to try to chase down any type of garbage truck.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to removing the fee, but I understood that you can privately contract your garbage service. You do not have to use the Waste Connections contract that the city offers. And
You
that
can.
somebody could privately contract. So should somebody do that for whatever reason, maybe they just don't like Waste Connections, don't want anything to do with them, what happens then? We're not going to get a fee from them either.
I mean, if you would like us to contact all the solid waste providers, ask them for a list of who they serve in our city, and then charge them per vehicle. You understand the administration side and the enforcement side of it. I could have $500. It's just hard to enforce it.
That's a lot of tedious work. I don't think you're gonna
And
get
that's why I
anything
was
out of it.
suggesting the removal of it.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, for the caterer question, we have that amount is from code as well. The $500 fee to serve alcohol as a caterer is outlined in the code.
As a caterer.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the temporary is $100. That's in the code book as well. So what happened is that our current fee schedule had 50. Our code actually says 100. So our fee schedule was behind the code. And same thing with the caterers. It was our current fee is $250, but the code says $500.
Is that for
It's-
sales
it's-
only or?
It's biennial, so it's $250 a year or $500 for the 2 years.
But the question I think Greg's asking is if they just have a box of wine someplace, do they have to pay that fee, or is it if you're selling wine or?
1.2.1.
For the application, I think that's tied to the application to serve, to
Oh.
operate as a caterer by the glass. Is that what your question is?
Well, you're saying cater, which is 1.2.2. I'm still back on 1.2.1, selling or serving. I wanted to say if there was a distinction between those
Yeah,
two.
what constitutes selling or serving alcohol, I guess is the question. I mean, if you're not a caterer,
Okay.
what brings you to the point that you're selling or serving alcohol? I mean, might serve alcohol in my home. I gotta go get a permit to serve that? I hope not.
So that's a temporary permit for like a special event, or, yeah, a special event or wine tasting or selling alcohol at a festival or some closed event within the city. You would need that permit.
Well, the question, when does it rise to that level that you need the permit? Because like, the guys at the church get together and we serve beer.
Mhm.
Do we need a permit for that? We have a wedding of 100 people. Do we need a permit for that because they serve wine?
Yeah.
Where does it cross the border to?
Let me look at that in the code for you and be able to answer that. I can imagine that, a small intimate get together, but I'll try to find a more specific definition of when you are required to get that temporary permit. I suspect it's tied to like a special event, but I'll look and see. A wedding is not so much of a special event.
To those who are getting married,
It's pretty special, yeah. Especially to the mother of the bride.
Yes. It probably weren't, no.
I find it a little bit concerning that our code references specific dollar amounts for fees instead of referencing the fee schedule for fees. I suggest we work
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you're always going to have that mismatch if you put it in both places. So remove it from the code and refer to the fee schedule. It's probably the solution, but I'll let those who. have
Okay,
expertise.
so section 3, this has a lot to do with utilities. Right now, there's no proposed change. I'll just try to explain the process to you. You're new to the city, come in, sign up for utility. We have a $50 connection fee. You pay that. 3.1.2 would be if you moved from one house to another inside Bel Aire. Right now it's $0. The proposed change is $25. With the increase of multifamily, we're seeing a lot more transfers. So that is kind of what we're trying to put on to your guys' radar, is we're starting to see a lot of increased load of work for transfers than we had before. It used to not be a big deal, so that's why it was $0. Now it's starting to be a little bit of a time situation. So we added 25, which is half the cost. That's
Yeah,
something
but
for you guys to discuss.
But you're removing the disconnect and the reconnect fee, which is essentially the same thing.
So we're renaming that. If you look on 3.1.5, that would just be a straight $50 connect and reconnect fee. Bundle them together.
That's if you're late on your payment, right?
That would be, yes, if you are in delinquent status and we need to send a public works operator out to your house and turn off the meter. That's called a disconnect. And then before it would say, all right, we're going to charge you $25 to go out there and turn it off. Well, once you turn it off, you got to turn it back on. So we have another fee called a reconnect fee, which is another which makes no sense. It's $50 disconnect reconnect fee.
Okay, so I guess what's throwing me is that you're not removing the fee on 313 and 314. You're actually eliminating those two items.
Eliminating the two items and replacing it with a non-payment fee.
Okay.
Again, it's all about, a lot of the theme here is simplifying our fee structure and code. You'll kind of see as we walk through where we're trying to make things a little more accessible, a little simpler.
How many of those do we typically charge a month?
How many? I'm sorry.
Disconnect, reconnect, or the new version, the non-payments. How many of those get charged a month?
So right now we're sitting around 30, average 30 disconnects a month.
And so in each of those cases, a public works person is going out, disconnecting the water. Somebody then pays the fee and then they go back out and they turn it on, and that's happening 30 times a month.
Correct. And not only that is we'll actually keep a few workers to 5:30 so that if someone wants to call, come home, and then so it kind of throws off the schedule even with public works, because they usually typically leave at 3:30 and start at 7:30. So
I'm not sure that fee's high enough to cover those costs.
And here we go to a little bit of a history. We had it higher, complaint, probably in 2017. We lowered it to 50. It was, I believe, 150. 75. So
Yeah, I kind
we
of
lowered
remember
it.
talking about this, that the worst problem was that they already were having trouble paying their bills, so we weren't going to get more money from them.
We have a lot of frequent.
Yeah, it's a tough issue. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, somebody's driving out there, they're disconnecting it, they're driving back, then they're driving out there again, they're reconnecting it, and then they're driving back, and then you've got the administrative overhead of that.
So it's another subject, but maybe just think about it. Are we giving them, and maybe you already know the answer to this, are you giving them resources to get help when you find that there are people who have difficulty paying their bills? Because
Yeah, we have
finances-
several people utilizing some programs.
Yeah.
It's
I don't want to get into the
running a
detail here.
utility is a
Right.
hard. You got to think of it separate as a city or anything else. It's a utility, and we try to pride ourselves on what would Evergy do, what would Kansas Gas do. I think we go above and beyond for a lot, but we try to steer them in the right direction if they need help.
Because there are programs out there that will help them.
There
pay
is,
these utilities.
and I sign up for them, so we receive emails and automatic payments when they come through. But it's a matter of the person being eligible for it and
Sure.
applying for it.
All right.
That's kind of out of
Good.
our hands.
So utility late payment fee of 5%. What 5% of what? Over what period of
The
time?
bill. So say you have $100 utility bill. It's the
$105.
11th. We apply a 5% penalty
So
on that
if I still don't pay
$100.
it the next month, is it another 5% on top of that?
I'm sorry.
If I still haven't paid it the next month, is another 5% on top of that?
Yeah, any balance.
Okay.
But we'll shut you. Our disconnect reconnect won't let you get arrears the way it works.
Okay. All right. Good. All right.
The other issues were a little bit, and it's kind of hard, is 3.1.7, 8, and 9. Sometimes, if it's pretty easy to turn back on your water. So if we see that happening, we'll send another utility or public works official out to lock the meter. Before that was basically free. Now, if we have the need to lock a meter, we're going to do another $50 charge. If the lock is damaged, if someone comes and just decides to cut it off, it's another $50. And then the big one, 3.1.9, is probably not associated with shut off, but when we say we need more staff to handle a lot of things, a lot of if there's a leak, inspection, there's a lot of service orders. I think I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think we're up to 1,500 work orders that up to this year, maybe 12 to 1,500. So all those are unpaid, uncharged work orders. So if someone has a leak, we'll go check the meter, make sure it's running, say it's on your side or our side. That's okay. We'll allow that one time a year. But if we have habitual offenders or say, hey, I think there's a leak, I think it's your problem. Well, we're not going to, as a staff, say, no, it's your problem. If we get accused of, hey, it's on our side, we're going to send someone a work order out there. But if it's the third time in the year, we'll probably say, hey, it'll cost you $50 if we have to come out and do that. That's what 3.1.9 is.
Can you help me understand why would somebody be a repeat offender for calling the city and getting you to come out? Like, what's the situation?
They either don't believe their bill. It's kind of a way of complaint. It's a way of, from my perspective, that sometimes it's very useful. We find out, hey, it is a leak on our side or your side, and that's those one time a year. How often?
I like that.
how
Once a
often
year,
have you
great.
had
Okay.
A leak
Yeah.
in your house, a running toilet. We'll
Sure.
walk everybody through that. That's where a lot of the customer service side of a utility happens, and every day I hear one of my clerks, walking someone through. It's probably a leaky toilet. We have dye packs that you can stop by City Hall. We'll provide them for you. Shake the handle. I mean, there's a lot more to here's your bill. Let's take your payment. We're walking people through what what even a sewer charge is. Why do you have sewer? Why do you need sewer? There's a lot to that customer service side. So this is kind of one of our, what we've been seeing and we take back to you is, hey, there's some people that we have to send work orders 3 or 4 times every year. We'd appreciate if maybe we had some teeth to say, hey, it's a $50 because I see it's the more than one time.
I love the freebie, but then, yeah, I love that
Exactly.
idea.
I
As a
venture a
deterrent.
guess that a lot of those calls are when summer hits and irrigation bills go up and people don't understand the cost of water.
Well, I had one cook send me a note about who want to know who is dumping 1,000 gallons of sewage in his sewage, because we pay on average winter usage, and in April he saw that he had 1,000 gallons worth of sewage and he didn't buy that much water, so he wanted to know who's dumping the sewage in his system. So we don't meter sewage, but I explained the process. I think he understood it. Okay.
Yep. So really the only big one you might and you guys can discuss or think about is the transfer fee. I think everything else is pretty standard in line. But on 3.2 wastewater connections, wastewater connections, really no change. 3.1.8. We'll kind of get into those 3 sections here in the next few pages, but it's really how much time it takes for us, how much time it contracts. We just recoup that exact amount instead of trying to guess. So let me go over that a little later. You're going to see it in a few different sections coming up, but there's really not much change on page 5. On page 6, 5.1.3, currently we have an open records request of 50 cents a page for color copy. Our fee schedule doesn't reflect that, so this makes that reflecting of the fee schedule. 5.2 is kind of a big change, or not so much. I know we've talked in the past about names. If there's something that is a little bit of a staff time waste that maybe we could avoid, please bring it up to me. This is my way of kind of bringing it up to you. Right now, we rent out the community room for birthdays and graduations. And to tell you a little bit how this works, someone will come to City Hall, my front desk, or one of my utility clerks will say, "Hi, welcome to Bel Aire. What can I help you with?" Well, show me this event space. So we have to have someone go show the event space or community room. And really what we do is say, hey, it's just a room. Here's some chairs. If you want to rent it, here's how it goes. You need to be a Bel Aire resident to rent. Oh, I'm not a Bel Aire resident, but my aunt is. Well, sorry, you're not a Bel Aire resident. And then the aunt comes the next day. Yeah, it gets to be kind of one of those things, and that's fine. I think when the policy was set up is when we built this new building and said, let's utilize it, let's do it. I think, and I know the next question is going to be, well, how many times do we rent it out? 20 this year so far, I think it was 13. Last year's 15 total, with about $2,000 in revenue on that for private parties. To me, it's really one of those things that it kind of takes a little bit of time. The other big element, most parties are from, say, 6 to 10 o'clock at night. We give them a key. The police officers will come at 10, make sure everybody's out, make sure the lights are out, make sure everything's locked. Sometimes police officers are busy. Sometimes we have doors open. Hopefully now that usually, sometimes around 1 or 2 in the morning, a police officer will walk through and find a door open and they'll lock it. So that's a little bit of an issue. Sometimes I get here on Monday and there's chairs everywhere. So it's a lot of those things. I don't mean to throw a lot of shade at it, but it does take a little bit of staff time to be an event coordinator type business, which we're not in. And so my removal of the fee would be to stop renting the community room for private parties. Of course, we're still going to open it up during business hours for community meetings, HOA meetings, events, trainings. Some organizations, I'm sure you've all been to one that utilize the meeting. I'm not saying we're going to stop doing that. We don't charge them anyway. It's just more of the birthday parties and stuff like that, what I would suggest removing.
You're going to remove the fee, but you'll still allow them to have the party? Is that what you're saying? You're going to make a policy?
No,
parties aren't
it'd be
allowed?
the policy, it'd be everything. Yeah.
Policy is not allowed, or the party's not allowed.
No private events. Yeah.
And with
Right.
the, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
With the, I totally agree. Just that's more hassle than it's worth. But with the folks that are still going to be in here and not being charged anything, is that pretty much limited to, I know you listed them, but like the chamber, like we're not going to have Bel Aire residents that their book club is going to come in here and meet for free, or that's going to get abused. Like, is it pretty much just city business that meets here?
City business, and sometimes associations associated with the city. So like the chamber, a few other associations sometimes rent it out. Police, sometimes there's a taser training that will open up to other communities. What else, Ty? It's just a lot of that type of.
Okay, good. Because my only hang up was if there is literally anybody else that is running this, they should be charged something. But I like the idea of getting
Big
rid
thing
of the
would be the
parties.
HOAs use either the community room or the senior center. Those would be the only kind of fringe. Oh, it's not completely, but it is a community, and they usually meet right around. We haven't had any issues with those groups.
And really, the
So-
policy is that it's nonprofits that are associated with the city can use it. So that would be an HOA because that's part of the city, as all the training and stuff. But it's got to be a nonprofit, and they have to have some kind of business with the
There's
city.
a whole separate policy document on that, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yes.
So there is and I don't even know the name of it, but there's a dance group that meets down there in the community room.
That's the senior center. That's the line dancing. I think that's
that part
what
of the
you're
senior
talking-
center?
Yeah,
thing?
it's a senior club or senior center.
All right. I
line
wasn't sure
dancers.
who did that. Okay. All right.
Every
very good.
Friday, if
Thank you.
anybody wants to join. I hear the music.
Is it Friday? I thought it was Monday. No wonder I keep missing it.
I think it's Friday because I'm dancing usually with it. It's Friday. On here comes the kind of the ones I've referenced earlier. 5.3.4. Before, with labor, equipment, and materials, we had random amounts like $50 for I don't know where they're getting all this, but it's pretty easy to, when we're invoicing for service, I just look up how many hours we used, who was on the project, and recoup our costs that way. Right now, we kind of have to do the $58 an hour, but I'd like to move to 5.3.4, which just simply says all labor expenses shall be charged at the employee's hourly rate, including overtime pay. And then labor costs shall be increased 45% to cover fringe benefits in my time and all that. So pretty standard. We take this from other communities. That's how we drafted it, is what they're doing.
I don't like you doing the employee's hourly rate. I'd
Okay.
rather you set a rate and say what that rate is. And I'm fine if it's $30 or $40 an hour, but I'd rather you just set a rate.
Seems like it'd be easier for you that way too. Standard rate.
I mean, then we get back to kind of what we currently have, where it's $50 an hour, $75 after. Is that what you're proposing to
What
keep
types
the
of
original?
scenarios are we charging these rates?
So very few, but sometimes, when I don't want, if another utility company will come and hit one of our lines, we'll send guys out to repair that line. I'll invoice them for the repairs and the time we spent on that repair. I'm trying to think other times I've done it. Any type of big road mess that might happen, you'd charge the insurance company or the insurers. So say semi truck full of
an
jam fell.
accident?
I don't know. I'm just trying to guess of
Will they
any
have an
type
accident,
of
damage, will they have an accident, damage something?
damage. Yeah, a lot of that type of stuff. I've been here 6 years, and I've maybe used this policy 4 or 5 times, and it's usually associated with utilities and that sort of thing.
Not for like code enforcement type remediation.
So, and that's when we get into not the staff time or per se. It would be more contractual mowing, stuff like that. It's kind of hard, a little fuzzy, because we just got a new code enforcement officer in the 6 years I've been here. Code enforcement has been a tough one for us. So trying to think of all the times we've done that. But along that same lines, and we'll continue, 5.3.6 would be equipment use. We just use FEMA schedule. This would be a lot of times if someone wants to use our street, another city wants to use a street sweeper or some type of equipment, we charge the FEMA rate. That's a lot easier than saying the mowers were 75 an hour, the tractor and backhoes worth 150 an hour, and have it inside a set schedule that we only revisit every once in a while. The FEMA schedule gets updated every year, just like a per diem with the IRS. As well as 5.3.8, which says all materials purchased from the city at warehouse inventories or third-party vendor contractual services shall be charged at cost plus 10%. The 10% is pretty important because that's all the administrative time of me paying that contractor, setting up into our vendor system, all that.
Is that purchase cost or replacement cost?
It would be purchase. It'd be purchase cost. I'm not sure.
You buy something and you have it in inventory and now it's gone up 25% at the store.
I don't know if we're going to get that. I would say purchase cost, or maybe
Inventory cost.
yeah. Again, a lot of these things are pretty few and far between, and it's just nice to reference an easy, hey, this is what we're going to charge you because this is what the fee schedule says.
Hey Ted, quick question.
Yeah.
How often are we revisiting, updating this whole fee table?
It should be annually, once a year. I think COVID threw us for a loop a little bit, and that's why you see kind of some robust changes. I expect next year and the year after will be pretty minor changes throughout.
I'll just say, when we do updates with our T&M rates as a contractor in business, we always revisit those annually as well, so that we can update those with our current contractual relationships for like emergency response on calls. And I think generally what's more accepted is that there is a standard rate instead of there being individual charges, unless you're in a cost plus fee kind of relationship. So I think it would be better if we're reviewing them annually or even every 2 years, that it just be a standard table that we're adding incremental cost escalations to every 1 to 2 years for both equipment and labor, really, because I think the FEMA schedule is great, but I don't think it may not be completely applicable to the items that you're wanting to charge. I don't know if we actually capitalize all our equipment, if that's just a pure rental rate that you're comparing to FEMA, or if that's an actual ownership cost, or I would worry about that a little bit, depending on how long we're keeping equipment and what costs we're trying to recoup. But that's just a comment I just figured I'd make.
So you're suggesting we keep the current rates?
I think if you think we need to
increase them by 10%.
I think if you think we need to raise the rates, we should just raise the rates and keep standard rates with labor and equipment, if we're revisiting them every year, every 2 years.
I just pulled up the FEMA schedule and it has 535 different entries for possible things that you could rent,
apply,
and it looks very robust. Having all of those things on our fee schedule seems less good to me than just referencing a table that's maybe close enough. So I actually really like that suggestion of just using the FEMA rates.
And again, I don't mean to.
Yeah, if we're not doing this very often, I'm good with the FEMA rates. If we were doing it on a regular basis, then I would look at
some inside baseball on this is when you apply for a grant and some of your matching is considered labor, you want the highest rate you can. so that we don't have to put cash on the table. We put the material and the equipment that we have as a match for the grants. So if we have FEMA, they tend to be a little higher than 75 or $100 for a backhoe. Not that they're out of market. I just think, again, they might. That's what I see, because that's really in the last 6 years all I've really reported equipment, unless it's a break, but would be for a grant purposes.
So we don't typically charge this fee like if Keachai needs to borrow something from us or we need to borrow something from them, because we do that from time to time, right? Between the cities, the local cities. And
Not as often as you think.
Okay.
Street sweeper, I can recall, and that's something we do want to charge, because those are very expensive pieces of equipment and
Yeah.
they tend to break down. I imagine if they needed some emergency assistance, we're more than welcome to be friendly neighbors.
We did. I thought we did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to remember, I'm pretty cheap. No, just kidding. And I'm not really sure on the consensus on this. You guys might be able to, I might keep it. And if you have any big feelings, and that's what's hard. There's been a few spots where we've been a little differ. I don't know. We might suggest some things as we.
It's not a huge bit. I just wanted to share what kind of common business practice is for construction companies.
Sure.
That's really all I was doing. Doesn't mean that's what's right for the city. So
you're going to see a little difference in the business side, because municipalities don't capitalize anything.
Right.
And businesses capitalize everything.
Sure.
Except what can be expensed, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. I'm getting that. I'm gathering that.
And
Thanks, Ted.
depreciation schedule goes with it.
Right. Thanks for explaining that, Ted.
No problem. Now to some of the harder parts of the fee schedule. It really is. Page 7, no change other than the highlighted 6.2.9. As you know, we hired Jay Cook, our planning and zoning director, and this type of stuff that he looks at, and we're kind of under market price for new residential building construction permit fees. If you look at page 8, I had them, or we talked about it, and how best to describe this would be if you set, $300,000 single family dwelling with a finished basement, our current fee would $480. The proposed, and we're just, looking at Wichita and Sedgwick County, what they're charging, Andover, Park City, Derby. You can go down the line and see what their current charges are if you built the same house there. The proposed would be 40 cents a square foot. And some of these, if you note on page 8 and down in the footnotes, most, Wichita, Valley Center, and Sedgwick County charge per square foot, which we thought makes more sense, because a contractor can say any value that they want, and that's kind of the square foots. It's hard to, it's more direct. So this is a lot of information at once, but we did want to put it in front of you and show you that we're a little below market in this area. There's a lot of room for discussion, but we're just looking at our
drives
neighbors.
our cost in this space. So does a house that has more square feet, cost us more to provide service to in this area?
So it's hard. In conversations, we talked, we're really not sure why, they charge less for unfinished, because the majority of the inspection is done in the basement, unfinished land. So that's where you get into, how much service are we providing per house, per square foot? It's, we send an inspector there, how many times during the inspection. And
Well, I know the bigger the house, sometimes they'll have 2 furnaces instead of 1, 2 air conditioners instead of 1. You got more windows. I mean, there's just, the size of it's bigger to inspect and things like that. I think the other important piece that we were talking about, because we just came through the budget season. And we were talking how we needed more help because of all these new homes and the strain that it's putting on our staff. And then you were juggling, well, how do we bring these new positions to take care of that and keep our mill levy the same? Well, this is the way that you can keep or lower your mill levy and allow those new homes to cover the cost of those added services that we're providing to them. And so that's kind of why we're supporting, being more competitive. We're still below everybody else, but being more competitive to keep the goal of our mill levy low, which is what you want, but yet we have to provide these services to these new homes.
And we don't have to report this on the revenue neutral rate.
I think it makes a ton of sense to adjust the fee. I was just kind of wondering, like, is square foot the right measure? Or should it be more of a fixed fee regardless of square foot, by dwelling unit or something like that? Maybe every other city does it this way, and so we should just be like them too. I can be okay with that as an answer. It's probably my least favorite reason for doing something, but here it's maybe okay.
If you think about it from the perspective of the contractor, that consistency makes a big difference to them. Whether it makes a difference to us or not, the consistency to them says, oh, they're 40 cents a square foot. The other guy down the street, 60 cents a square foot. Now I get it. Okay. All right. What's next?
Good. Okay.
Too
6.2.
many pages here, man.
6.2, really not a lot of change on, or I guess page 9, not a lot of change on the top. 6.2.22 and 6.2.23, really those are two new fees that we added. Haven't had to deal with this, but now that we have so much construction going on, same day inspection, some people call and demand stuff. They need it now. They need it today. We try to be accommodating as much as we can, but sometimes Keith is completely scheduled out that whole day. And we also understand, hey, I got a concrete guy coming tomorrow morning, that kind of thing. So if you want, we'll do a same day inspection for $50 an hour with a half-hour minimum, something like that, as well as after-hour inspection, just something that we can recover cost on if that is something that they want. The other thing on 6.4 really, and again, this is 6.4.5, 6, and then 8 and 9. Before we just had 100 for lot splits, preliminary plats, final plats. We just had a straight $200 plus $5 a lot plus engineering cost. Well, that didn't quite make too much sense. So let's take lot split, for example, 6.4.2. We have $150 plus engineering cost. We just did a flat $200. Makes more sense, easier to charge. Talking with Ann, and they don't take that much time where we're going to be backwards because we don't have engineering costs, associated. Let's just do a flat fee. Again, try and simplify things for people. The only other, the final plat and preliminary plat going from $5 to $10 a lot. Jay, after talking with Dan and really Jackie's been a part of a lot of this stuff, you do a lot of work with platting and there's a lot of evaluating. $10 is not outside. I text Jay as I came here. I said, we didn't create the model for you, but most cities in our area are $10 a lot for this project. So that's what we're looking at is we never want to be an outlier. We never want to be different, kind of like we talked about. We want to try to be consistent with the area, and we feel $10 a lot is more than enough or fine. Page 10, pretty small section, just engineering, again, pointing back to 5.3.4 and or 5.3.8. 11 and 12 is just evaluation. You'll see there's some things that we charged based on valuation. Before, the table wasn't in our fee schedule, which is odd. So I thought maybe we should add it into our fee schedule so they had something to reference. We'll continue to update and look at those fees next year. If we're ready to move on, section 7, recreation. Not a lot of changes. I added day camp, 7.3.8. With the, I don't think we've updated. There is availability to rent out the gymnasium, the activity room. Brian felt that we can still offer those services, but $35 an hour is way too low for what he has to do to have a staff member there. So we upped that $75 an hour for the resident and $100 for a non-resident. Same with the activity room over there. These are mainly private events, but Brian still feels that as a recreation center, and that's kind of where we're at. Is we're trying to be that, provide what we need to the community. The only change on the swimming pool, and I was kind of back and forth with Brian. If we are going to reline the swimming pool, maybe we collect an even $5 on day fees. I don't know if we want to go dramatically up, but not another $5. I'm sorry, from $4 to $5, so another $1 per day fee. It's not going to make much of a dent, but at least it's a round number that we don't have to break change. So you just give a $5 bill. If there's any other questions on recreation fee schedule, let me know, but it's pretty basic.
We have the same fee for non-residents on the bill just because we too much hassle to figure out if they're really a resident.
Yeah, I pretty much the memberships are easy to ask, but day fees, I think it's just kind of a cumbersome exercise. Section 8, another one of those, kind of like our permit fees, court costs. I tried to add, we surveyed everybody in the area, kind of the 3 big ones we judge ourselves: Mays, Park City, Valley Center. They're all $100 on court costs. What court costs are, and right now the breakdown, and I had a little typo on this, not would be, is currently. So impose, or the $100, or sorry, the current breakdown is $48.50 to the general fund, $22.50 for KLTC that trains police officers, and that we don't see a cent of that. That goes to the state. $1 for judges, $5 for our police training fund, $3 to court, and $3 to court service. So if we go from $83 to $100, that's an extra $17. We'd like to increase the police training to $8 a case. Court improvement fees to $5. So from $5 to $8 for the Bel Aire training fund. From $3 to the court improvement fee to $5. $3 from the court service fee to $5. And then we're going to add a new technology fee of $10. A majority of our discussions in the police budget is technology upgrades. I had a meeting with, a software provider to try to upgrade all our systems to avoid having to keep hiring and as we grow. And, court, of course, is part of that, and upgrading technologies to allow, people to pay online. A lot of that stuff, it's going to take time. So a majority of that increase, $10 of the $17 would go to technology fee and training. So that's kind of where we're deciding on, and it brings us in line with a lot of the areas that we're seeing. And if there's no questions on any of that stuff, page 15, and I don't know if we can go over all of the rest of and if you've been here a number of years, for some reason our fee schedule has literally every infraction and different, and I realized we don't need to have that because there's a uniform code, KSA 82118, that has fees and that's updated. So what this does is take the Uniform Act for violations and put it into our code, so it constantly gets updated. The state does it, and I think pretty much every other municipality has this code adopted, or this state uniform code adopted. So that's what I did with all our changes. Is the reason for the change is because the state changed the fees and fines. Some of the other stuff, and I noted, driving on play streets not listed, so we have a fee for it. I increased that to kind of go in line with what other increases are doing. But we can talk about it, but I don't know if we need to go through every single offense in court. So the way I'm seeing it is these last 7 pages are pretty much going to get reduced to 1 page, and just going to say fees and violations shall be enforced based on the uniform code. And then it's clean. It's simple. You're not wading through a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of things on the fee schedule that are court appearance required, the CAR. Is there anything that we see on a regular basis that maybe by default requires a court appearance where, maybe that's taking a lot of the court's time and that should specifically be revisited as something different here in Bel Aire? I think as I was looking through this, I was surprised by some of the things that said like a court appearance was required. I think one of them was like handicap parking. There should be a big fine for that, but I was surprised that I think like a court appearance was required for that. And some of those things probably happen almost never, and so it's not a big deal. But I was just wondering, is there anything that we should be looking at from that perspective?
I can do a review of it, but most of those are going to be driven, the court appearances are going to be driven by statute. So the state's deciding that, and it's uniformly applicable. But I can do a specific scan of them and see if there are any that maybe we've imposed or that are not uniform that we've added that court appearance requirement for. Get back to you.
All right, so that covers your fee schedules.
Yeah, just a quick summary. We'll get some answers on alcohol if we haven't answered them, but I'll get more of a clarification on that. Trying to think if there's anything that I'm just trying. So when you see it next time, it's probably going to have just the fees, or do you want me to keep this kind of side by side? Eventually, it's going to go just to current would be all these changes. So I don't want to confuse anybody if the next time you see it, it just has the description and then the proposed cost. So I know we stumbled a little bit on hourly. Do we want to do employees' own rate, or do you want to set $30 plus 45% for what's the feeling on that?
I think you should make it $50 with no add on to it, just $50
per hour.
Per hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about nighttime or overtime? No, do you jack that up?
Well, you could say
50 plus
overtime,
something, or-
overtime is $75 an hour.
And does that $50 cover our costs for benefits as well as salary?
That's the thinking. That's why he's
Ted,
use those numbers.
So that's just an example number
Right.
then?
Yeah, that's
So we need
the-
to jack it up high enough that it covers whoever might show up and all of their expenses.
Ted, it felt like you really wanted to move away from that. Can you say a few more words about like what kind of complexities the current system's creating for you, or why maybe this is a bad idea to go back to that?
I can't clearly define what types of situations that are going to arise that I'm going to charge an older lady $150 for a public works. I don't, there's so many different scenarios running through my head. would prefer that we kind of treat it as what our cost was going into that plus 45, what the actual cost was versus just a flat $100. Because a lot of times I send the invoice and then I get the call back saying, what are you talking about? They were here for an hour and a half and they didn't even do any work and you charged me $250. A lot of those types. So if I can have some clear, defined, no, that's the hourly rate of the supervisor and the two employees that were out at your house or out on the scene, or also dealing with insurance companies. I don't know if you've ever been in a wreck. They tend to pay you what they want to pay you, and then you have to fight it, and you have to provide them, no, this is what actual cost. I've been through a few of those situations. So that's kind of my rationale. It seems apples that, hey, this is what it cost us. Why? Because this is what they're paid. I understand the need for $50 and $100. That's fine. That's just in my mind. If I'm defending the fee schedule, that's what I'd like.
If you're going to do that, I think you almost have to do it by role, because you're going to want to charge a different rate if our city attorney has to show up somewhere than if an equipment operator one shows up somewhere, versus if our city engineer has to show up somewhere. I think you would want to have potentially a different hourly rate by discipline, almost, if you're going
These
to
are
do
all
that.
laborers. This is all labor.
Well, I mean,
This is 534 is all labor, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a city attorney. It's a worker.
how do you define?
It's somebody doing construction work or backhoes or stuff like that, isn't it? It says labor, equipment, and materials. That's the heading.
To me, labor could mean any staff member that has to do labor
so.
for something.
Yeah, it could be a police officer, could be a backhoe operator.
So is that broad of a category here?
Yeah.
Skilled labor, unskilled labor, project management, heavy equipment operator. It's very specific in that role.
So how often does this come up?
4 times in the last 6 years, maybe.
4 times last 6 years. Yeah, let's not overcomplicate it. Just do it the way you want. Think it's
That,
simplest.
and that's
then,
kind
I
of where,
guess.
and you can say to every person, hey, we were made whole in this situation.
Yeah.
Nothing was.
Do
we
it as
covered
simplest
costs.
and let's go on.
Yep.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on something.
Do we want to do
Whatever
40,
happens.
40, do we want to do 40 cents a square foot? Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And-
And again, you have ample time to, if you want to hear from the public and change it, that's fine. I just want to be clear so that my final report is reflected. And I think that was really the only major change that we were discussing. So I have good direction now. And if there's any questions, let me know.
Well, thank you for all the work on that. That's a
lot.
lot of tedious detail you got to go through. So appreciate that. All right. So that was the only issue we wanted to discuss under finances. Is that correct? I know you had that
Yes, sir. Mayor.
comparison, salary comparison report in there. but-
Yeah, that was
Just
just, those were
information.
together.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move on to other issues then. Just as a clarification, I think all council members received something from the county. I think Ty forwarded it to everybody on a fire advisory board for the Sedgwick County Fire District. And there was, so you saw a draft of that advisory board that the Sedgwick County is proposing to create. Learned some more information about that Saturday and then a little more yesterday about it. So just wanted to run that by you just so you know what it's about. We don't have to take any action as a city on this. What they're looking at is eventually going to is an elected fire board. They said that Sedgwick County is one of the unusual situations, one of the unusual counties in the state that doesn't have an elected fire board, district board. And that would cover all the fire districts, the entire fire district within the county, except those cities that have their own fires. So Wichita has its own fire, Valley Center has its own fire, Derby has its own fire. So they wouldn't be included in that, but everybody else would be. I don't remember how many fire station districts there are in the county, but there's like 10 or more of them. This this is just an advisory board that would advise the Sedgwick County on the issues related to the fire board. Their hope is and their belief is, and we have to see some numbers on that, haven't seen them yet, that the fire board can actually operate cheaper than the Sedgwick County can operate the administration of the fire districts. And there might be some truth to that because of being a smaller organization. They might be able to pull that off. I don't know. I need to see some numbers on it. Nobody has produced any. They just said we can do that. And so that's where that's coming from. Anyway, so they're just looking for some feedback. There was a couple of suggestions made at SCAC on Saturday about some changes. They proposed 5 communities have a member on this fire district board. Bel Aire was one of them, Park City. And SCAC actually suggested that they remove one of those cities and make SCAC one of them to represent more of the smaller communities that don't get representation otherwise. And so they may make that change in there. Anyway, it's a proposal that's draft. I don't know how much support there is for it or not for it. I just don't know. But I just wanted to kind of give you some information because I know Ty sent that out. And when I got it, I thought, what's this about? What are they trying to do? So that's where it's going, what the thought process is. I guess there has to be some state statutes changed in order for them to create a fire board. But it'd be an elected board, like the county commission, if they did that. Okay. So just want to give you some background on that. Any other issues we need to discuss this evening? Well, then I thank you for your time this evening and call it the end of the meeting and we'll go home.